Be me, Sharon. Successful corporate lawyer, 52 years old. Raised my son George to be enlightened about gender equality. Always made sure he understood male privilege from early age. When he was little, constantly corrected his behavior when he showed typical toxic masculine traits. Rough play? Shut that down immediately. Wanting toy cars or action figures? Redirected him to more nurturing toys. Any sign of aggression or competitiveness? Long lectures about how men use violence to oppress women. Made sure he knew that his natural male instincts were problematic. Taught him to always defer to women in conversations. Explained how men historically oppressed women, and he needed to make up for that. Never let him forget that being born male gave him unearned advantages. Raised him to be the perfect feminist ally. George grows up quiet, always apologizing for existing. In school, never stands up for himself when bullied. Constantly second-guessing every interaction with girls. Comes home asking if it's okay to answer questions in class because he doesn't want to take up space. Perfect. Exactly what I wanted. A man who understands his place in dismantling the patriarchy. Fast forward to last week. George is 30 now, still single, works some dead-end office job. Barely speaks to me anymore, which honestly I attributed to typical male emotional unavailability. Suddenly he calls, says he's coming over to talk. Voice sounds different, strained, whatever. Probably wants to borrow money again. He shows up at my door and I immediately notice something's off. Usually he slouches, keeps his head down, speaks softly. This time he's standing straight, looking directly at me. We need to talk, Mom. I invite him in, offer him tea, like always. He refuses, just stands in my living room staring at me. Sharon, he says. Wait, what? He called me Sharon, not Mom. I've been in therapy for 6 months now. Oh great, here we go. Probably some male therapist filling his head with toxic masculinity nonsense. I start to explain how therapy can be problematic when it doesn't account for gender dynamics. Stop talking, he interrupts. Excuse me? For once in my life, you're going to listen to me speak without interrupting, without correcting, without lecturing. The audacity. I try to respond, but he holds up his hand. Do you know what my therapist told me? She told me that everything I thought was wrong with me, every reason I couldn't connect with people, every fear I had about my own existence could be traced back to you. His voice is getting louder, angrier. This is exactly the kind of aggressive male behavior I spent years trying to eliminate. George, you're raising your voice at me, and that's not okay. Oh, no, he shouts. Actually shouts at me. You don't get to tone police me anymore. You don't get to make me feel guilty for having emotions. He starts pacing around my living room. Do you have any idea what you did to me? I try to explain that I raised him to be conscious of gender inequality, that everything I did was to make him a better man, that the world needs men who understand their privilege. He laughs, but it's not a pleasant sound. Privilege? Privilege? He's practically screaming now. I spent my entire childhood believing that everything about me was wrong. Every instinct, every interest, every natural behavior was something to be ashamed of. George, please calm down. I will not calm down. He starts listing things, counting on his fingers. I was afraid to play sports because you told me competition was toxic masculinity. I never learned to stand up for myself because you said male aggression was always wrong. I couldn't make friends with other boys because you convinced me they were all potential predators. I was terrified to show interest in girls because you made me believe that male sexuality was inherently threatening. This is ridiculous. I explained to him that these are real issues in society, that I was protecting him from becoming part of the problem, that raising awareness about these issues was good parenting. Protecting me? He stops pacing, stares at me. You destroyed me. You made me hate everything about myself that was male. You convinced me that my natural desires, my instincts, my very existence was harmful to women. His face is red, hands shaking. I've never seen him this angry. George, I understand you're upset, but... Upset? I'm not upset. I'm furious. I'm furious that I spent 25 years of my life apologizing for existing. I'm furious that I missed out on friendships, relationships, experiences because you made me terrified of my own masculinity. I try to interrupt, to explain that toxic masculinity is a real problem, that men do need to examine their behavior, that I was just trying to raise him to be better than other men. Better? Better? He's shouting again. I'm 30 years old and I've never had a serious relationship because I'm too afraid that everything about me is threatening to women. I can't make decisions because you taught me that male confidence is arrogance. I can't pursue my goals because you convinced me that male ambition is oppression. This is getting out of hand. I tell him he's being dramatic, that plenty of men learn about gender equality without having these problems, that maybe he should find a different therapist. His face goes completely white. then read. Different therapist? You think the problem is my therapist? He sits down heavily on my couch, puts his head in his hands. For a moment I think he's calming down. Then he looks up at me with tears in his eyes. Do you want to know what the worst part is? His voice is quieter now, but somehow more intense. The worst part is that I still love you. Even after everything, I still love you and want your approval. And that makes me hate myself even more. Because loving you means accepting that everything you taught me was right. But if everything you taught me was right, then I'm fundamentally broken for being a man. I try to comfort him, to explain that I never meant for him to feel that way. That feminism isn't about hating men, it's about equality. That I was just trying to make him aware of important issues. He laughs again, that bitter sound. Aware? You didn't make me aware, you made me paralyzed. You didn't teach me about equality, you taught me that I was the enemy. George, that's not fair. Not fair? He stands up abruptly. You want to talk about fair? Let me tell you about fair. He starts pacing again, his voice getting more emotional. It's not fair that I spent my teenage years convinced that any sexual thought I had made me a predator. It's not fair that I never learned how to be confident because you equated confidence with oppression. It's not fair that I can't enjoy traditionally masculine activities without feeling guilty. It's not fair that I apologize for my opinions before I even voice them. I try to explain that confidence and aggression are different things. That there's a difference between healthy masculinity and toxic masculinity. That I was just trying to help him understand these nuances. Nuances? He stops pacing, faces me directly. There were no nuances in your teaching. Everything masculine was bad. Everything male was problematic. You never taught me how to be a good man. You taught me how to not be a man at all. This is getting excessive. I tell him that he's misremembering things, that I always supported him, that I just wanted him to be thoughtful about gender issues. Thoughtful? Thoughtful? His voice cracks. I think about gender every waking moment because you made it the center of my identity. I can't have a conversation without analyzing whether I'm taking up too much space. I can't pursue a woman I'm attracted to without wondering if my interest is inherently predatory. I can't feel proud of accomplishments without wondering if I only succeeded because of male privilege. I start to explain that examining privilege is important. That self-reflection is a good thing. That these are conversations more men should be having. But not every conversation, not every moment, not every breath. He's crying now, which is honestly making me uncomfortable. You made gender the lens through which I see everything, and it's killing me. I try to approach him, to offer comfort. He steps back. Don't. Just don't. I came here to tell you something, and I need to say it. He takes a deep breath, wipes his eyes. His voice gets very quiet and very steady. You made me ashamed to be a man, Mom. The words hit me like a physical blow. What does he mean, ashamed to be a man? I never wanted him to be ashamed. I wanted him to be aware, conscious, thoughtful. George, that's not what I intended. I don't care what you intended. He's shouting again, louder than before. I care what you did. Something snaps inside me. How dare he blame me for trying to make him a better person? How dare he attack me for raising him with values? How dare he make me the villain for teaching him about oppression? You think I made you ashamed? I hear myself shouting back. You should be examining your privilege. You should be thinking about these things. The fact that you're upset about it just proves you needed to learn it. Men who don't think about their impact on women are the problem. He stares at me in complete shock. There it is, he says quietly. There's the real you. Even now, even when I'm telling you that your parenting damaged me, you can't stop lecturing me. You can't even consider that you might have been wrong. Wrong? I wasn't wrong. These are important issues. The world needs men who understand these things. I tell him this, explain that his resistance to examining his privilege is exactly the problem. My resistance? He laughs that bitter laugh again. I've examined my privilege every day for 30 years. I've examined it so much that I can't see anything else about myself. I've examined it so much that I don't know who I am underneath it. This is ridiculous. I raised him to be thoughtful and he's attacking me for it. I tell him that maybe he needs to find better friends, people who support his growth, that maybe his therapist is undermining the important work we did. Important work? You call destroying my self-worth important work? You call making me afraid of my own masculinity important work? You call teaching me to hate fundamental parts of myself important work? He's being dramatic. I never taught him to hate himself. I taught him to be conscious of how male behavior affects others. These are different things. No, they're not different, he shouts. Not the way you taught them, Not when every natural impulse was met with a lecture about oppression. Not when every sign of confidence was labelled as potential aggression. Not when every moment of male bonding was analysed for toxic elements. I try to explain that analysis is good, that unconscious behaviour can be harmful, that awareness prevents problems. Awareness, yes. Paralysis, no. You didn't give me awareness, you gave me analysis paralysis. You didn't give me consciousness, you gave me constant guilt. You didn't give me tools to be a better man, you gave me reasons to hate being a man at all. This is getting out of hand. He's clearly been influenced by some anti-feminist rhetoric, probably his therapist, probably some men's rights nonsense. I tell him this, explain that these talking points sound familiar. His face goes completely dark. There it is again. Dismissal. Instead of listening to what I'm telling you, you're analysing who might have influenced me. Instead of considering that your methods might have been harmful, you're assuming I've been brainwashed. Do you see what you're doing? Even now, you can't stop analysing and controlling. I'm not trying to control anything. I'm trying to have a rational conversation. He's the one who came here, shouting and making accusations. I tell him this. Rational? He stares at me. You think this is rational? Your son tells you that your parenting damaged him, and you immediately assume he's been corrupted by anti-feminist propaganda. Your son tells you he's struggled his entire adult life because of how you raised him, and you analyze his influences instead of his pain. That's not rational, that's defensive. Defensive? I'm not being defensive, I'm trying to understand what's really going on here. Clearly something has influenced him to see our relationship this way. These aren't his authentic feelings. Not my authentic feelings? He explodes. How would you know what my authentic feelings are? You've never asked. You've never been interested in my actual experience, only in whether my experience fits your ideology. That's not true. I always cared about his feelings. I just made sure he understood important social dynamics. This is completely unfair. Unfair? You want to know what's unfair? He starts counting on his fingers again. It's unfair that when I told you I was being bullied, you asked what I had done to provoke it. It's unfair that when I wanted to try martial arts, you lectured me about violence instead of signing me up. It's unfair that when I had crushes on girls, you made me analyze whether my attraction was objectifying. It's unfair that when I succeeded at something, you reminded me about privilege instead of celebrating with me. These aren't accurate representations of what happened. I was teaching him to think critically. I was helping him understand complex social dynamics. I was preparing him for the real world. The real world? The real world? The real world is where I can't function because you taught me to second guess every instinct. The real world is where I'm alone at 30 because I'm too afraid of my own masculinity to pursue relationships. The real world is where I watch other men live confidently while I analyze every breath for signs of toxicity. Maybe he needs to work on his confidence. Maybe therapy can help him find better balance. I suggest this. He stares at me for a long moment. You still don't get it. After everything I've told you, you still think the problem is with me. You still think I need to be fixed rather than considering that you broke me. Broke him? That's dramatic. No one is broken. Everyone has challenges to work through. I explain this. Challenges to work through? He's screaming again. I'm not working through challenges. I'm trying to rebuild an identity that you systematically destroyed. I'm not overcoming obstacles. I'm trying to learn how to be human after 30 years of believing my humanity was harmful. This is excessive. He's clearly been reading some problematic material. Probably some men's rights websites. I tell him that this kind of rhetoric is concerning. Something changes in his face. He becomes very calm, very quiet. You just did it again. I told you something deeply personal and painful, and you immediately categorized it as rhetoric. I shared my authentic experience, and you labeled it as problematic influence. Do you see? Do you finally see what you do? I'm just trying to understand where this is coming from. These ideas didn't develop in a vacuum. Someone or something influenced him to see things this way. Yes, someone influenced me, he says quietly. You did. You influenced me to hate myself. You influenced me to fear my own nature. You influenced me to believe that everything about being male was dangerous and wrong. And now, when I finally find the courage to tell you what that did to me, you're looking for other influences to blame. That's not what I'm doing. I'm trying to understand his perspective, but clearly he's been exposed to some anti-feminist ideas that are distorting his memories. Distorting my memories? The calm breaks. He's furious again. You think I'm making this up? You think I'm imagining what my childhood was like? Not imagining, but possibly reinterpreting through a different lens. Memory is subjective. Current feelings can color past experiences. I explain this. He sits down heavily, puts his head in his hands again. Jesus Christ, Mom. Just Jesus Christ. When he looks up, his eyes are red. You can't even acknowledge that you might have hurt me. Not even when I'm sitting here crying, telling you exactly how you hurt me. You'd rather believe that my pain is fabricated than consider that your methods were wrong. My methods weren't wrong. Teaching awareness about gender dynamics is important. Maybe the delivery could have been better, but the content was necessary. The content was necessary? He stands up. Destroying my self-worth was necessary? Making me afraid of my own gender was necessary? Teaching me to apologize for existing was necessary? I never taught him to apologize for existing. I taught him to be mindful of his impact. These are completely different things. No, they're not. Not when you're 5 years old and don't understand nuance. Not when you're 12 and just trying to figure out who you are. Not when you're 18 and trying to build relationships. Not when you're 25 and trying to find your place in the world. Children are more resilient than he's giving them credit for. And these lessons were important for his development. Better to learn them early than struggle with them later. He stares at me in complete disbelief. Resilient? You think I was resilient? Do you want to know what resilience looked like in your house? Resilience was learning to hide any sign of natural boyhood because it would trigger a lecture. Resilience was pretending to agree with your analysis of every interaction so you wouldn't escalate. Resilience was swallowing my own personality so completely that I forgot I had one. That's not resilience, that's compliance. And compliance isn't what I was looking for. I wanted engagement, discussion, growth. You wanted agreement, he says flatly. You wanted me to absorb your worldview without question. Anytime I showed resistance or confusion, you doubled down on the lectures. Anytime I expressed different thoughts, you analyzed them for problematic elements. You didn't want discussion, you wanted conversion. This is unfair. We had many discussions over the years. I always encouraged him to think critically. Critically about everyone else, never about you. I could analyze anyone's behavior for toxic elements, but I was never allowed to question your methods. I could critique any aspect of masculinity, but I wasn't allowed to defend any aspect of it. You called it critical thinking, but it only went in one direction. Critical thinking means examining all perspectives, including challenging his own assumptions, including understanding his privileges. My privileges? He laughs bitterly. What privileges did I have in your house? The privilege of being lectured about male violence every time I played too roughly? The privilege of having my interests analyzed for misogynistic elements? The privilege of learning that my natural instincts were inherently harmful? Male privilege exists whether he experienced it at home or not. These are broader social dynamics. I was preparing him to understand his place in those systems. His place in those systems, he repeats. Do you hear yourself? You determined my place before I had a chance to find it myself. You decided who I was going to be in the world before I knew who I was as a person. I was giving him tools to navigate complex social realities, tools that many men never develop, tools that would make him a better partner, friend, colleague. Tools? These weren't tools, they were shackles. Tools help you build things, shackles keep you from moving. You didn't give me the ability to navigate social realities, you made me afraid to participate in them. Fear isn't necessarily bad. Healthy fear prevents harmful behavior. Some caution around gender dynamics is appropriate. He stops moving, stops talking, just stares at me. Healthy fear, he repeats quietly. You think the fear you instilled in me was healthy. Caution around potentially harmful behavior is always healthy. Awareness of impact on others is always good. These are basic social skills. Basic social skills, he says, still quiet. Is it a basic social skill to be afraid to speak in meetings because you might be taking up too much space? Is it a basic social skill to apologize before stating any opinion? Is it a basic social skill to analyze every interaction for signs that you're being oppressive? Because those are the skills you taught me. Self-awareness is important. Considering impact on others is important. These are signs of emotional intelligence. No, they're signs of trauma. The quiet breaks again. They're signs of someone who was taught that their natural state is harmful. They're signs of someone who learned to fear their own instincts. They're signs of someone who was systematically taught to distrust everything about themselves. This is getting nowhere. He's clearly committed to this victimization narrative, probably reinforced by his therapist or some online community. I tell him that this conversation isn't productive. Victimization narrative? His voice gets very dangerous. You think this is a narrative? You think I'm making up being damaged by your parenting? Not making up, but possibly exaggerating. Possibly influenced by current therapeutic trends that blame parents for adult problems. personal responsibility matters too. Personal responsibility, he says. Right, it's my responsibility to get over the damage you caused. It's my responsibility to rebuild what you tore down. It's my responsibility to fix what you broke. But it's not your responsibility to acknowledge that you broke it in the first place. Parenting involves difficult choices. No parent is perfect. But the intention was always to help him grow. The intention, he repeats. Well, let me tell you about the impact. The impact is that I'm 30 years old and I've never been in love because I'm afraid that any romantic pursuit is predatory. The impact is that I can't pursue my career goals because I see ambition as oppression. The impact is that I have no close male friendships because I was taught to see masculinity as inherently toxic. The impact is that I hate fundamental parts of who I am. These sound like problems that therapy can address. Personal growth is always possible. Maybe he needs a different therapeutic approach. He starts laughing, not the bitter laugh from before. A completely exhausted, broken laugh. A different therapeutic approach, he says. Because the current one is helping me too much? Because learning to value myself despite your conditioning is the wrong direction? Because developing healthy masculinity is problematic? Healthy masculinity is fine, but it needs to be examined and conscious, not unconscious and potentially harmful. Conscious? I've been conscious every moment of my life. He's screaming again. I've been so conscious I can't function. I've been so examined I don't know who I am. I've been so aware I'm afraid to exist. This level of emotion isn't healthy. This kind of anger toward women is exactly the problem. This is why examining masculinity is so important. He stops screaming, goes completely silent, stares at me with an expression I've never seen before. Anger toward women, he says very quietly. I'm angry at you, my mother, who damaged me, and you immediately categorize that as anger toward women. You can't even separate your identity as a woman from your identity as my mother who hurt me. Personal attacks on me are attacks on women. This kind of blame toward mothers is a common pattern, especially when influenced by anti-feminist rhetoric. Personal attacks, he says. Telling you how your parenting affected me is a personal attack. Sharing my pain with you is anti-feminist rhetoric. Asking you to take responsibility is an attack on women. Do you see how you do this? Do you see how you make everything about gender politics instead of about me? Gender politics affect everything. Personal relationships don't exist in a vacuum. These patterns are larger than individual families. These patterns are larger. He stops himself mid-shout, takes a deep breath. I can't do this anymore. You just proved everything I've been trying to tell you. I'm your son, telling you about my pain, and you're turning it into a gender studies lecture. I'm a human being asking for acknowledgement from my mother, and you're analyzing me as a representative of problematic masculinity. You can't see me as separate from your ideology. My views about gender aren't ideology. They're based on research, experience, and analysis. They're informed perspectives on real social problems. Informed perspectives, he says. Right. And my lived experience as your son is what? Uninformed? Invalid? Corrupted by anti-feminist influence? His perspective is valid but limited. One person's experience doesn't invalidate broader patterns. Individual feelings don't change structural realities. He nods slowly. My experience is valid but limited. My feelings are individual and don't matter compared to structural realities. Do you understand that this is exactly what I'm talking about? You just dismissed my entire life experience as less important than your political beliefs. It's not about politics. It's about understanding how systems work. Personal feelings, while valid, exist within larger contexts. Systems, he says. Contexts. Structures. Everything except me. Everything except your son who is standing here telling you that you hurt him. Hurt is subjective. Growth often involves discomfort. Learning about inequality is sometimes uncomfortable for those with privilege. Growth, he repeats. Learning. Right. You're still doing it. You're still teaching me instead of listening to me. I'm trying to help him understand. These concepts are complex. Emotional reactions don't always lead to accurate insights. Emotional reactions, he says, like crying when I tell you about my pain, like getting angry when you dismiss it, like feeling hurt when you analyze it instead of acknowledging it. Those emotional reactions? Strong emotional reactions can cloud judgment. Some distance and perspective might be helpful. Maybe he should take time to process these feelings. He walks to the door, turns back to look at me. You will never acknowledge what you did to me, will you? You will never take responsibility. You will never see me as more important than your ideology. This isn't about ideology. It's about being a thoughtful, conscious person. These are important values. Important values, he says. More important than your son. He opens the door. "I won't be coming back, Mom. Not until you can see me as a person instead of a case study." He's being dramatic. This will blow over. When he calms down, he'll realize I was trying to help. But as he walks away, something feels wrong. Something feels broken. Maybe I should call him later. Maybe we can work this out. Later, I try calling. It goes straight to voicemail. I leave a message explaining my perspective. How gender awareness is important. How these conversations are necessary. He doesn't call back. Days pass. I leave more messages, each one explaining why his reaction was disproportionate, why he needs to understand the bigger picture. Weeks pass. No response. I reach out to his friends. They say he's doing well, that he seems happier actually, that he's started dating someone. Dating someone? After everything he said about being afraid of relationships? Maybe his therapist helped him work through his issues. Months pass. I hear through mutual friends that he got engaged. Engaged? To someone he just started dating? This seems impulsive. I wasn't invited to the wedding. I find out about it on social media. He looks happy in the photos. Confident. Like a completely different person. Maybe I should reach out. Congratulate him. Explain that I support his happiness. Try to rebuild the relationship. I write a letter, explaining my perspective, how I've reflected on our conversation, how I think we both made mistakes, how we can move forward. The letter comes back unopened. Return to sender, written in his handwriting. Years pass. I hear he had a son, then a daughter. He's successful at work now. Confident, assertive. Everything I tried to teach him not to be. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe my methods were too intense. Maybe I should have been more balanced. But the principles were still right. Gender equality is still important. Male privilege still exists. These things still matter. But sitting here alone in my house, looking at pictures of a son who won't speak to me, grandchildren I'll never meet. Maybe the principles weren't worth this. Maybe I lost sight of the person while focusing on the politics. Maybe I forgot that he was my son before he was a representative of his gender. Maybe I was so committed to being right that I forgot to be his mother. But I was right. About the issues, about the problems, about the need for awareness. I was right about everything except how to raise a son. How to love a child while teaching him difficult truths. How to build him up while breaking down harmful systems. The phone rings. For a moment, I think it might be him. But it's just a telemarketer. Another stranger's voice in my empty house. Maybe someday he'll come back. Maybe someday he'll understand what I was trying to do. Maybe someday we can have the relationship we should have had. But maybe not. Maybe some bridges can't be rebuilt. Maybe some damage is permanent. Maybe being right isn't worth being alone. I was right about the issues. I was right about the problems. I was right about everything, except what mattered most.